Hi class, this is step one of the infograph exercise. We'll start with just the setup and then we'll go on to step two, which will be actually making the Jane's running infographic, and then step three, showing you how to make hip pie charts. So here's step one. So this is what we did on class on Tuesday. This is just the setup. So if you want to skip this and go to the actual building of Jane's infographic, head to number two. But so in order to make, get ready to make the infographic, for the infographic exercise, we need to grab a couple of assets. The first one we're going to grab is a map of California. And we want to make sure we type in SVG, Scalable Vector Graphic. Typically, whenever we download an icon we're going to use for the for an infographic, we're going to want to use SVG, Scalable Vector Graphic. They can be scaled to any size. They're perfect. They're exactly what we need. So I'm just going to, actually, I will go to this page. I know that it's royalty free because it's Wikimedia Commons, so the license is good. I'm just going to click here to open in the media viewer, and then right down here, I'm going to click this arrow to download the file. And I'm going to download the original file. Boom, there that goes. So we're done with that. We've got our SVG map. We can get out of Google Images. Next thing we're going to need a couple of icons from Noun Project. So if you don't have an account for Noun Project, please sign up for one. It's going to help a lot in infographics, in this infographic chapter, instead of having to build them. It's a free account, so please just go ahead and sign up. So it's just thenounproject.com. So we need to get a running shoe first of all. And we have tons to pick from. I'm just going to grab this one right here. That works just fine for me. I'm going to hit download. Once again, SVG, Scalable Vector Graphic, meaning we can scale it to any size and it will not lose resolution. We're going to go Creative Commons. Royalty free means that if I was going to use it for commercial work, I could pay for it, but I'm going to just download it for educational purposes. So I will source the person who made the icon, and I'll show you how to do that. But make sure you just use the Creative Commons license. Second thing we're going to need is a woman running. And I'm just going to grab this one right here. And I'm going to hit download, SVG again, and Creative Commons. Okay, so we have our icons that we need. And in terms of this exercise, where I'm going to grab all of the stats from, you'll see under this week, April 25th, infographic exercise. Under here is this document that holds all of this information. Essentially, we're setting up this infographic for Jane, who is a runner, and she wants to track her health and fitness, and we have some data here. So we have these three graphs that we were going to build. One is a map to show where she's ran in the last 6 months. One's a bar graph to show her times in those races, and the final one is a line graph, which essentially just shows her running distance in that particular month. So we're going to build a graph for each of these stats that we have. So once again, you can just get that on Polylearn, infographics exercise there. So one other thing we need to grab a color scheme. So I'm going to go to Adobe, and this is the best place to get color schemes, Cooler, which we've talked about in class. And right here, color.adobe.com, color.adobe.com. And I would highly recommend getting an account. It's free. So I'm going to sign in. The real advantage to signing in, to creating an account here is that if I can remember my password, it's obviously not that. There we go. Is that once you choose a color scheme, it will then add it to your library, which will then be available for you in all of the Adobe programs. And I'll show you what that means here in a minute. So let's go ahead and explore, and let's just go for, we're going to look for a color scheme here. I'm just going to go, I'm just going to type in running and see what comes up just for the heck of it. And I've got a bunch of different things here I can choose from. You know, actually, I'm going to type in marathon because that's what this is kind of all about. And sometimes your subject matter, you can find things that work perfectly if you spell marathon right. Oh, that is not right. There we go. And I'm still, looks like I'm still not spelling it right. I can't remember how to spell. Let's try Chicago. Let's try this again. And so sometimes when you type in your exact subject matter, there'll be someone who's done the same and has a built a theme built around your subject matter. So you're going to see some things here, like there's different marathons that have been run here, like the Chicago Marathon. There's that, the New York City Marathon. People have come up with color schemes for those. So, you know, I'm going to, I'm just going to choose this one right here called Marathon, and I'm going to hit save. And that's going to pull up this dialog box, and it's going to say, hey, do you want to save this? And do you want to save it to your library, your Creative Crowd library, which will then give you access to it in all the Adobe programs. So I'm going to hit save. There's also another way around this that you can do, and I'll show you. We kind of did this in class. So let's go ahead and go into Adobe Illustrator now. We need to make a new document. Remember, I'm just going to call this Farber _info EX. There are two ways, two different sizes we can deal with when doing an infographic. We can either do the portrait or the landscape. It depends on what assets you have and your story. It's up to you if you want to do it portrait or landscape. So if you do it landscape, we want to do it 12 by 8. If you do it portrait, you want to do it 8 by 16, no more than 8 by 18. Portrait is kind of leaning more towards what people are doing nowadays, but you got to make sure that it's not too scrollable. So 8 by 16 is a good place. But we're going to do landscape in this case, so I'm just going to choose that and hit OK. And there's my document. So the first thing I'm going to do here is I'm going to set up a grid. It's always good whenever you're designing something to set up a grid. Oops, I got a ton of things open here. I'm going to close. So the first thing I want to do is go to my layers panel, and I'm going to create a second layer. I'm going to double click on layer 1 and call it grid. There we go. And then I'm going to get my colors ready. I basically am going to set up a grid through a shape. So you notice here the fill, if I hit slash on my keyboard, that allows me to have no color. And if I hit X, that pulls the stroke to the front. And if I hit the slash on my keyboard, it allows me to have no color. Now I'm going to go ahead and hit M to give me a rectangle. And essentially to set up this grid, I need to draw a rectangle the size of my artboard. So there we have it. And then to make this a grid, you need to go Object from the top of the menu, Path, and then split into grid. Object, path, split into grid. I'm going to hit preview here. And because we have 3 infographics, I'm going to make 3 columns. I'm going to give a little bit of gutter, something like about 0.2 inches, and maybe I'll put in 1 row to show me where the half of the page is. I'm going to hit OK. And there I have my grid structure. Now in order to change this into guides, I need to go View, and then Guides, and then Make Guides. So to make these into guides, that's what I have to do. So I'm going to go View, Guides, Make Guides. And there we go. We have some guides set up. Now it should only be on layer 1 for our grid, And we need to lock that so that when we are working, nothing moves, nothing happens to the grid. And you need to make sure you're working on layer 2 now. So we have the grid layer locked and we're working on layer 2. We can go ahead and close our artboard layers panel. Now, in terms of the colors, you're going to notice right here that marathon color I downloaded from Adobe Cooler. I said to put it in my library, and right here in my libraries, you're going to see there it is. There my color came up. That works perfectly. So if you sign in with your Adobe account, you can simply add all of these color schemes to your library, and it works seamlessly. One of the things I want to show you that's kind of important, it's a good idea to just click and add this to your swatches. And essentially what the swatches are is now if you pull any of these down from the top, you're going to see that color scheme has been added up in here, which can be quite helpful. So the way we did this in class was a little bit different, and I'll show you real quick. We essentially, I'm going to hit X on my keyboard to change my stroke to the fill in the front. I'm just going to change the color to whatever. And I have the rectangle selected. And essentially what we did in class is we created little, we created the color scheme in a different way. And I'll show you how we did that real quick. So I'm going to hit V on my keyboard for my selection tool. I'm going to hold the Option key down to duplicate. And I'm going to pull out 5 of these boxes because essentially color schemes typically are 5 colors. So there's my 5 colors. So kind of a quick and different way that you could go about having your color scheme here is essentially by, pulling up Marathon here. There's another way you could go about this. I would do it the way I did it for my libraries, but if you don't have that functionality, here's another way you could do it. You see the hex number down here? I'm simply going to double click it, and then I'm going to copy it, Command C. Then I'm going to go back to Illustrator. With the first shape selected, I'm going to hit I from, actually, I'm going to double click the fill here, and I'm just going to paste in the hex number right here, which it defaults to, and hit OK. And there's my first color. I'm going to go to my second color and do the same thing. Go to the second color in the theme here, double click on the hex, hit Command C, and then paste that here. Oops, I'm sorry. Double click on the filled ship and then paste it here. And there's my second color. And you want to continue to do this for the next 3 colors. I'm going to do that and I'll be right back. Okay, so we have completed our color scheme. We've got all the colors right here. It is much easier just to sign in to Adobe Cooler and get it in your libraries here, but this is another way to go about it if you want. All right, we're going to now move on to step 2 and start building the infographic.